comic books, gaming, other nerd culture stuff that, some of you guys, the kids, used to get made fun of. It wasn't the cool thing to do to be a part of these different subcultures. But things are now, like a lot of the geek culture stuff has crossed into like mainstream. You've seen that, well, in the West, right? So you've seen that with everything from comic books to video gaming, anime, all of those sorts of things now has more people, which you can make the argument that that can be a good thing. But, because more people are obviously being exposed to this. And, that gets more investments into that particular subculture, which, like I've said, right now, as a guy that has grown up on comic books, this should be the most exciting time. Unfortunately, it's not, because the fake geeks took the industry over. So now we have a bunch of activists who now have control of the properties, who are making comic books and comic book film and animation, as well as like TV shows that just really are vanity projects that are just being used to kind of launch people's careers at this point. That's really all that it is. And these guys, these blue check marks, which, for those of you that aren't on Twitter, well, I mean, it's usually a blue check mark across the board. Doesn't matter if it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. But it's a verified, of course, these accounts who do something, right? And they love to come out when someone is critical of what's about to like be released. So let's say in this context, we're talking about Cowboy Bebop, right? So we're talking about a live action depiction of anime. Okay. And of course, the Faye Valentine thing happened. Daniela, who was the actress that's playing her, responded in a interesting way, to say the least. And obviously people took issue with it. Now, of course, as usual, blue check marks start coming out pretending like they've been fans of this stuff for years, right? And then they make these usual critical errors that you can almost tell right away that this guy was a Google normie. Let's go through what exactly I'm saying right quick, or what I'm talking about. So right now we're looking at this Aaron Stewart on guy. Apparently does something with Thor at some point. I don't know. But some guy with a blue check mark. And he was responding to something that the Quartering said. And he obviously in reference to Daniela and her video. If you haven't seen it, go look at my previous shows as well as the video itself, where she was like going at fans because of them like criticizing the costume. He says, though, Aaron says, this is exactly what Faye Valentine from Cowboy Bebop's character should be like, you dumbasses. Talking about how condescending, I guess if nothing else, she had that down, how condescending she was in that video kind of response where she was specifically naming the fans. She used the term fans and basically being condescending at them, her not living up to the expectation that they maybe had of Faye Valentine. And he says, of course, and as a ridiculous hardcore fan of Cowboy Bebop, let me remind you, it was mostly written by women and Ed is canonically non-binary. Now, of course, this couldn't be anything further from the truth, but don't let facts get in your way. See, these guys are, of course, agenda driven. So what ends up happening is they probably become Google experts. Maybe this guy's even seen an episode on Toonami or something of Cowboy Bebop. Maybe that's what happened. Does he actually know what this is? Of course he doesn't, because that last statement was a critical error. And usually you can find where these guys, these kind of fake geek cats, get in the, like they tell on themselves. Got to pick it up, because it's a lot more difficult to call these guys out on it because they have Google at their disposal, right? Where you didn't have that back in the Gap. You had to rely upon your just straight knowledge of it. And now you can become an expert on something by just Googling it and looking at some fandom Wikipedia site, something like that. And now all of a sudden you're the biggest fan of all of this material. He's probably one of those. But as people are showing, there's obviously more evidence than there numerous occasions, right? Where Ed has said, hey, I'm a girl. It's not non-binary, okay? It's a girl. Made that clear. Now, you might not like that, and maybe you were thinking that this was a character that you could try to piggyback your pronoun bullshit off of, but you told on yourself, Mr. Aaron, because that's simply not true. Now, if you are on the outside looking in, you may look at this as just, oh, well, this is nothing. It's just a guy that, okay, he got caught. He's maybe a little bit of fraud here on this subject matter. But you have to understand that these are the cats that are ruining the industries. These are the people who infiltrate. And then what happens is they hijack and then they make things about them. And they make things about their individual social preference. They make things about what it is that they want it to be about. And they'll attempt to use the characters, or let's say group of characters, or the entire show or anime or manga, whatever it is, comic book, to then launch to like, okay, bam, here's my chance to let everybody know my, let's say, progressivism or whatever that it may be. And unfortunately, we're now in a position where definitely in the comic book space, not as much maybe in the anime and manga space, but certainly in the comic book space, these types are the ones that are generally in control of these projects. So they get control over the depiction because they're hardcore fans, right? These super geeks. Remember that chick? What was that chick's name? I actually rubbed a couple of feathers. It's a chick that's been kind of floating around. Dang, I think her name starts with an F. Chick that kind of floats around the Felicia something. She floats around like the geek nerd culture stuff, right? She's been doing that for a little bit, but she was on some like Netflix show and completely just tells on herself and her inability to really understand like Marvel comic books. And you know, those are the types that are like, hey, look at me. I'm part of this geek culture. And then just basic bare bones questions they just don't seem to get, or they understand, or rather they answer it in a way that's completely like absent of what actually is taking place. And that's not what someone that actually reads this shit would ever say. Okay. But that's the problem with it. It's not that there's just fake geeks, like whatever, man. That doesn't mean anything, I guess, on its own. You get exposed, you tell on yourself, you end up having people posting under your status this, saying that you have no idea what it is you're talking about. But that's not the issue. The issue is that those types are now the ones that are getting in control of these projects, and they're running them bad boys to the ground. So I don't know what it is about the guys over there in Japan. You are kind of one of the last guys standing. Stop giving your fucking work to weirdos to depict it live action. I know Netflix probably cutting you guys a check, probably making a decent amount of money, but you're seeing what they're doing. I don't know why y'all keep allowing them to do this. I have no idea. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.